Right, okay. So this material is basically going to do most of the work, if not all of the work. The geometry is going to do bugger all. So I'm going to start with a very simple flat colour and look at what the problems are. So if we just start with a nice yellow. In place base and emissive. And I stick this on our object, and obviously the first problem is it's not transparent. So I need to go in and I need to change the shader. So if I click on the actual material, we can see that we're default lit and we're opaque. So I want to set this to be additive, and additive means that it will add to pixels that are behind it. And if I just apply that, and hopefully when it updates, there we go. Actually, I might cheat and just do something wrong, which is scale. There we go. Right, okay, so that's pretty cool. Let's just move that out the way, and let's just move that out the way because that doesn't look pretty. Okay, so that's a really simple shader. It looks a bit like God rays. It certainly looks like shafts of light. It looks very ugly when it hits the ground, and it's very obvious that there's an edge. Also, as we go around it, it looks a bit weird. So if we go back to our shader, we want it to be two-sided. So in other words, we draw the triangles irrespective of whether they're back facing or not. And we'll apply that, and we should now have 4 God rays. There we go. Okay, so let's solve the simple problems first. Not all of the simple problems necessarily being particularly simple. If I go and stick a cylinder in this scene, or in other words, when anything moves around this scene, the God rays are going to very, very obviously clip that geometry. So we need a way of making sure that the God rays don't appear to clip geometry. And we can do this with pixel depth. So we open up our material level, material editor, and we want opacity depth. Depth. There we go, depth fade. It has a couple of default values. For the opacity is 1, which means no fade at all, and then it has a fade distance. And if I just plug this in as a default and wait for it to update, we shouldn't see anything significant here. But again, if we go back into Unreal and wait for it to update, you'll see how the shaft fades out before it actually clips a surface. So as I drag this through, you can see there's no hard clipping. Okay, so the next thing is we can definitely see the edges of the rays. So what we really need is a texture on this geometry that will blend out at the edges. And I should have a texture that I made earlier. It's my raised folder and downloads. Where's my downloads? Downloads. Dust. Now let's see. Let's import that. So the dust. If I go into view, I can go through the channels. So it's a grey compressed texture. So on the red channel, basically what we have is beams, but I've made sure that it's black. In other words, totally transparent at the edges. The green channel basically has a fadey, cloudy, soft, mushy kind of texture. The blue texture has these lines which are going to be used to highlight the dust motes, and then the alpha channel has actual dust motes in it. You can't see it very well, but there is actually some blurring going on behind the dust motes. So what we got is 4 grey channels packed into one texture. So if I open up my materials editor, I can drag and drop this into the scene, and I should be able to take that red channel and stick it into the opacity. And if I put this on a box, we should see that that is effectively the light shafts that we want. Okay, how does that look on the actual geometry? There we go. So I've got my clipping back, but now you can see that we don't have a hard edge on the actual light shaft. So now my issue is I need to combine these. And you've got to remember that colours are just numbers. And with opacity, what we want is we want the opacity to go towards 0. In other words, we want it to become more transparent. In both cases, whether it's blending or whether it's interacting with the surface or the edge, we want to go towards 0. And it's tempting to use a subtract, but it's actually more correct to use a multiply, which sounds weird. But when you consider that 0 is black and white is 1, you can then understand that grey is 0.5, and then you can then understand that if we multiply 2 greys together, 0.5 times 0.5 is actually 0.25. So colours always get darker when you multiply them. So let's do a multiply. So now what we have is we have this combination of both opacities working in tandem, and so we can't see any hard edges. So the next thing that would be nice is to try and get this texture animating. Just a little bit of movement would really help lift what this is actually doing, and maybe it also needs to be brighter as well. So let's do a multiply here. And then for the moment, I'm going to use a magic number. Later off, I might parameterize this. Let's just wait for it to catch up. There we go. So I now have a way of effectively multiplying how strong that light is just by changing one figure. Right. Okay. So the next thing I want to do is I want to move the texture space around, because if I move the UV coordinates, then they'll move around. I just want red. Just show me red. Red, red, red. So what I want is I want to effectively move this texture space around. And moving the UV coordinates around basically does the same thing. So we'll have a quick look at what happens if I just start panning. So if I go into here and I set up a panner. Time. And my speed. So I want it to go this texture, the red, is the shafts are going down, so I want to pan across the X. So I want to set my X speed, I don't know, 5. No, that's not numlock. 5. Let's see. Oh, that looked fast. Whee! Disco ball. Okay, 5's a bit fast. Let's just turn it down to 1 for the moment. It'll still be too fast, but we need to see it before we tame it down. Right, okay. This is gonna look weird, but that's all right for the moment. There's a couple of other things that we need to do. So, first of all, it's moving way too much, and also you can now see the edges of our texture map again. And that's because as we go too far, as the white goes too far to the edge of the geometry, we get to see the geometry again. So the way to fix this is actually in this way that we've compressed and sampled this texture. If I open this up, and I need to find clamp, no, wrap, tile, texture, there we go, axis tiling method. I'm going to set these both to clamp. And what clamp does is normally when you get to the edge of a texture, it continues on. So if you get off to the right hand edge, it just wraps round to the left hand edge. That's what the wrap does. Clamp means that it won't go beyond that edge. So whatever's at that edge gets to repeat. And as I have black pixels at this edge, it will repeat the black pixels. So I'm just going to save that. And let's see if that has helped. Doesn't appear to have. Better check that on my material. Let's go and preview that node. Come on, come on. Okay. Let's put that in there for the moment. What I'm expecting to see is those lines go across the texture. Well, that's not right. Interesting. Get rid of that. That goes in there. That's the reason. Let's just break that for the moment. Let's make sure that that's what we want. That's definitely what we want. That's our time element. That's our speed. That's our UVs. Okay. I'm gonna move on a step and just make sure that this is correct. So I'm going to run that into a sine wave, and then I'm going to multiply this by 0.2. Okay, that looks a lot better.
What does the sine do?
So sine, if you're familiar with a sine wave, sine wave is this pattern.
Oh.
So over time, instead of that number just getting bigger and bigger and bigger, it gets bigger, but then it gets smaller, but then it gets really small, but then it gets bigger. And the important thing about sine wave is that it's curved, so it eases in and out. So what happens here is that the sine wave, instead of endlessly rotating it to the left or to the right, what we're doing is we're just shifting it by this value. So if I turn this down to 0.1, it shifts it a little bit less. It probably needs to be even less than that. So, and then, right. So let's go plug the original values back in again. So this is additive. This is our colour. And this is our opacity. So let's apply that.
It's starting to look really cool.
So it's still a little fast because I can see it, and it's the key thing with stuff like this is that it has to be really nice and subtle. Okay. So the other thing is now I can start layering those other effects. I'm going to go back to my dust, and I actually need it to wrap. So rather than making two, because I left big black bands, if we have a look at this texture again, I've left quite a large black band either side of the texture, and I've done this because I knew that what I wanted it to do is I want it to shift a little bit left and right, and for that reason I don't have to worry about clamping it in this particular instance. So I'm going to go back to my tiling, and I'm going to set it back to wrap so that I can use it twice. Right, so back to my material. So this is the beam shift. So now what I want to do is I want to add a kind of a soft variation, a cloud variation inside this, and that is on my green channel. So I'm going to take this and copy it. I'm going to have another panner. I'm going to have time. Speed is going to be a little bit of X and a little bit of Y. And I'm going to plug that into there. Now, so that I can see what I'm doing, so in this case it's going to be the green channel, I'm just going to plug this into the base color for the moment. And let's break the opacity link. And the emissive color link. So now we have this pattern coming in. So one of the things about this pattern is that it's quite small because it's all in the texture space, and we don't really want it to be this small. We want to use a much bigger version of this. So the coordinates that are coming in at the moment, I need to change. So let's put this as a 2D coordinate. And if I set this coordinate up to, whoops, 20 by 20, you can see it's really, really big. And if I set it to 0.2 by 0.2, we should see that it's really, really small. Is it not really small? Did I do that right? Why has that not worked? Let's just plug that into there for the moment. That's not done what I wanted it to do. Did I have to put a texture coordinate in? Texture coordinate. No, that's fine. So I can either scale it up or I can scale it down. Let's put it up at 5. We should see that I get lots of them. And if I scale it down, we get a big smushy cloud. So what I really want this to do is I want it to brighten this image. So in other words, if I take this and I do an add, and I take this green and I add them together and I put it in here, it'll be subtle, but you can just about see it smoking. And if I just change the colour of this momentarily, you can definitely see it smoking there. Let's put it back. Right, so let's apply that one. Oh, got rid of the opacity. Emissive and opacity. So if anything, it all looks a bit obvious at the moment. It's kind of working. It's got variation in it. Can't really see the smoke, so I probably need to exaggerate that. However, the key thing is that this opacity is probably going up as far as 1. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to multiply it down. So I'm going to set this to 0.4. So everything should be a lot more subtle. And I'm going to take this down so that I can actually see if it's working. Right. Okay. I think I'm going to have to turn off the jiggle and check the smoke because I can't see the smoke working there. Very hard to tell with the clouds in the background.
Yeah.
Oh, I think, yeah, I can see it. Not sure. Right. Okay. Well, no, I don't want to finish. Right. So, the next thing is to just make sure that that smoke's working by, let's disconnect that one. Let's turn that down. And let's just break that for the moment. So I just want to check to make sure that I've actually got the scale right. So I might need to tweak that a little bit. Yeah, that doesn't look quite right. That's way too quick. Now that I can see it, I can see that it's just too quick and it's probably a bit big. So let's go in. Let's change that to 1.4. That will make it smaller. Still way too quick. So speed, next speed. That looks better. Right, so the next thing I'd like to fix is put the dust motes in. So again, what I really want to do is I want to separate this out because it's very difficult to see what's going on if you don't separate each pass out. So in this case, I'm going to take this and make another copy. And I'm going to take this and make another copy. And let's look at the blue channel, which should be a bunch of lines. Let's just break that. So that's a bunch of lines. And then we have another one, which is a bunch of points. So the alpha channel in this case. And whilst it looks okay that these are moving around, we also want them to appear to pop in and out a bit as well. So I'm just going to change this rate because I don't want them to be exactly the same. And I'm going to change this to 0.37 and I'm going to change this to 0.2, guessing random numbers. So that should be a little bit quicker. Looks a bit quick. Looks a bit too quick.
It's like a small snowstorm.
Yep. It's probably 0.19. Okay, so now I only want the dust motes to appear when they intersect with the lines. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this and I'm going to multiply it with this. Oh, and this is going to be fun to see. Yep, I can see little sparks occasionally. Okay, let's apply that and see just how subtle that is. Yeah, it's really, really, really super subtle. Way too subtle. Way, 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 way too subtle. So I think what I'm going to do is just use this one for the moment. So the dust motes. So this is my smoky colour. And I'm going to use my dust motes to just multiply this. Let's just break that one for the moment. Let's see if we can see them. If not, I will amplify them. I can see them, but I don't know whether they're appearing on the monitor.
I can barely see them. It's very,
They're,
very
they're
small.
still too subtle. Let's turn this value down for the moment. It's weird. For a moment there I thought it was keeping up, but no, it's not. Okay, now it looks worse.
No, I can't see them at all.
No. Did I change the wrong one? No, that's the right one. Yep, multiply that. Okay. I'm going to do an add. No, that one in there. That one in there. That one from there.
No, I can see them. Yeah.
Yeah, I can see them. And I want this to be a bit lower. Hang on. Why is that not black and white? That. I'm just going to break that. This goes into here. This should definitely be a black and white image with little white flecks. Right. It's flecky. Right. Okay. That goes in there. That goes in there. That one goes in there. That one goes in there.
That's
Oh,
also really
oh,
cool.
oh, that's the wrong one. It's red. Red one goes in there. Is it the red one? No, it's not. It's the green one. This one's the red one. It goes into there. So that's our opacity. Oh, I've put that at 0. It should be. Okay. Oh, something's going way too fast. Okay, I know what I need to do. These. Oh, that's not doing anything, so let's just clean that up.
Those are the particles.
Yeah. So this speed. So I can either turn this speed down, or I can use a different set of coordinates. I think I might just turn the speed down.
What if I have superior consequence?
10th is probably going to be it.
That looks a lot better.
Yeah, I've stretched my UVs out. I should fix that, which I probably will.
You stretch them out.
Yeah, in other words, the UVs are square, but they shouldn't be square. You see what I mean? In other words, the shafts are very long and thin, and to fix that, I can either use another set of UVs, because I do want the beams to go along the UV set, but the dust motes I don't really want going along the UV set. I would rather have them in world coordinates.
Okay.
So I could do that. So I want. Do I want vertex world? Pixel world. I could do it in pixel. World. I want the world. I want the world position, but I can't remember which world position I want, because one of them is it world position vertex? Is it world? Come on, typey. World vertex. No. Vertex. No, it's definitely world. So let's check that those are what I want by plugging them in here and seeing what I get. Yes, that's world position. So I'm going to put the world position into here for the moment.
What is the main difference between the world position and the ones that you...
So when you UV unwrap an object, you give it UV coordinates.
Yeah.
If you use world position, it's using the X value in world space as a UV coordinate instead of the UV coordinate.
Okay.
So I need to mask this. So just going to, and where did the base color go? So that goes in there, and that goes into the coordinate. I'm probably going to have to scale world to get it to go right. So usually world is big and UVs are small. So I'm going to do a multiply. And I'm going to multiply by a tiny little fraction. Oh. I don't want X. I want Z is up, so I want X in Z. Yay! Yeah, I'm going to get some slight glitches on the edges there. So it looks right here, but it won't look right there.
But since it's just a flat plane, is that gonna have anything to say?
It'll work in one direction. Let's see if we've got the direction right. If not, I'm going to have to tweak a little bit. Yeah, I got it wrong. See? Look at that.
So how do you just swap it?
So I don't want, I want Y. Here we go.
All right.
I can see the repeating. So I will need, because all of them are in the same spot.
Okay, so you need to move
That
it around a bit.
that I need to offset. Because that is very obvious. It's yeah. So need to do some more maths.
Oh, maths.
So what I can do is do another mask. I can take the red value which we're not using, and I want to add it to this, but it's not a vector, so I will need to add another component. I will need to append the vector. So this is now a vector, and now I can add those two vectors together. This is already getting way too complicated, so maybe we should just use a triplanar at this point.
I'm so glad you're recording this.
Okay, so let's see what that looks like. There we go. See, that's why I need the second material to break the dust motes up, because they're just looking a little bit obvious. Right, okay, now the last thing that I would complain about as an art director is that they're very obvious when you get to an angle.
Yeah.
Right, you can virtually see the kind of edge clipping. They look very much like planes. So what we want to do is we want to do some more maths, and we want to blend out the angle between the camera and the plane.
I'm just sitting here and like, oh, okay.
Yeah, well, I mean, at some points you go, yeah, that one's clever enough for me. I'm going all in with all the things you could ever possibly do, I think. Right, okay, so for the moment I'm just going to break that. And I'm going to break that so that I can go back to my original very simple. So that again, because I'm adding something, I need to make sure that what I'm adding works. Right, okay. So what I want to do is I want to blend them out before they become really obvious. So to do that, I need the camera. Direction vector, and I need the normal, but which normal do I need? Do I want a vertex normal? Probably I want the vertex position normal. Sounds right. Got a nagging feeling it's not though, and I am going to do a dot product. And I'm going to stuff that in the opacity channel. And let's see if I've picked the right functions.
So what does the effect do?
Well, it's not doing what I want at the moment. It's doing almost exactly the opposite of what I want. Right, so it's not the.
Is there an easy way to just invert?
Well, I suspect it's not. What is that? We want to get the world aligned normal. Ah, is it the pixel? That does look exactly wrong. Okay, well let's try inverting it, because it appears to be exactly wrong.
You want it to be visible when you look at it from the side, but
1 minus.
on the thin side of the product, you want it to be.
Maybe I did do an invert. Opacity. Save. So as I come round to that edge should fade out. Don't see it fading. Let's have a look at it in the scene. No, that's not doing what I want it to do. 1 minus is definitely the inverse. Okay. Let me go and look it up.